Now, to help us reach the research goals that I mentioned earlier, astronauts need to be willing and motivated to participate as test subjects in life science and other scientific experiments. By doing so, they will contribute enormously to understanding the effects of the space environment and test or validate promising countermeasures. The workload of an astronaut is high and working hours can be irregular. As an astronaut, you need to be flexible. You need to be prepared to cope with frequent travels and being away from your friends and families for intensive training and preparations, both within and outside of Europe. And of course, once you are assigned to a spaceflight mission, even roughly 400 kilometers above this Earth. It is also really important to be able to work well as part of an intercultural and interdisciplinary team. We work closely with many people from many different backgrounds from all over the world and are very often confronted with challenging situations. So being able to communicate in a clear, concise, and also in a considerate way is really important. Astronaut candidates should have excellent fine motor skills. They need to be able to rapidly absorb and synthesize very complex information and make informed decisions. Astronauts also need to master the art of remaining calm under pressure. But don't worry, there's always a very strong team supporting them. And last but not least, astronauts are some of the most visible ambassadors of our space program. So as such, they will participate in public relations, outreach, and education activities where they should be passionate about sharing their knowledge about ESA and space exploration and engage wide audiences, especially the younger generation, not only before and during a mission, but also afterwards.
Thank you, Jennifer. Maybe a question to Frank, Frank de Winne, who is the head of the ESA Astronaut Center. Frank, what can our recruits expect from a future mission? No audio? No audio, then I come back to you in a moment, Frank, and I will maybe continue with a question to both Samantha. You're back? Then we go.
Yes, now it works, or it takes some time for the button to activate, I believe, like for my other colleagues. Yes, those future astronauts, of course, their first missions will be to the International Space Station. This is still the core of the business that we are doing today. The career astronauts will fly long duration missions to the ISS, where they will participate in all the research activities that Jennifer has just outlined. But it will not stop there. We are currently working with the international partners on future programs. One of the programs that has been decided by the ESA member states is the Gateway. We have today 3 ESA astronaut flights secured to the Gateway, so that will be astronauts that will fly further away from Earth than anybody has ever been, because the Gateway will be behind the moon or further away from the moon than the Earth. It's of course intended or it's planned today that the current astronaut corps, with all their expertise that they have, that they will be the first candidates to fly to the Gateway. But of course, we will not limit the number of flights to the Gateway to 3. Further on, later on, there will be additional flights. And of course, we also eventually want to work with our member states to have European astronauts flying to the surface of the moon. So while the initial missions of these astronauts from the Corps will be to the International Space Station, and that will be their core business for, I would say, the first 5 to 10 years, afterwards they might have opportunities to fly further away to the moon and maybe to the surface of the moon.
Thank you, Frank. And then maybe a question for Samantha and Tim, because they have experienced that in real life. What do astronauts do when they're not training for a flight? Samantha.
Sure. Good afternoon. Each of us has his or her own story, and it depends a little bit also on your interests and what the agency need from you at that given time when you come back from space. And believe it or not, you are going to spend some time on the ground before you get your next chance to fly to space. Personally, what I did, just to give an example, for a couple of years, I led a very exciting project initiative team that we have at the European Space Center, which is called Spaceship ESA. Where we get brilliant young people from all over Europe, young men and young women who work on their master thesis, or young graduates, or PhD students, postdocs, working on exciting new technologies that we might use on the moon when we have settlements one day on the moon. And then in the recent years, I have been involved with Gateway, which is this program that Frank was just mentioning. And so I got an opportunity of really, in a way, bringing my astronaut expertise into the early phases of this project, which is going to be like a small space station orbiting around the moon, but at the same time, really expanding my knowledge, my skills, my expertise by really understanding how such a complex engineering project comes together from the early stages.
Thank you, Samantha. Anything to add from you, Tim? I don't hear you. Can you try to speak again? Then let's move on. I come back to you, Tim.
Okay, so, sorry, the microphone's just come on. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so just to pick up on what Samantha was saying, I mean, firstly, what an exciting time. And as Frank mentioned there, some of the future missions that these astronauts have got to look forward to are quite incredible. When you're not actually flying a mission or specifically training for a mission, as Samantha mentioned as well, there are many, many ways that you can be actively employed by the European Space Agency. And in fact, prior to your mission, there are certain training events, for example, caves, where we learn about the psychological elements of living and working together in a mixed cultural environment with our fellow astronauts from around the world. And also underwater, for example, on NASA's NEMO mission, where again, we develop the skills and the techniques that are going to help us to actually manage a mission in space. Also, something I found really interesting was working as a Eurocom, so actually embedded in the mission control team that run the space station operations 24/7. And that gives you such a great insight into what it's like for the astronauts living and working on board the space station, but actually the enormous team that support those missions as well. And that really helps you as an astronaut to be more effective in your job. So many, many different jobs that astronauts can do when they're not training for a mission.
Thank you, Tim. Jan, a question to you. There's a lot of focus on diversity these days, and clearly this is also addressed by ESA. So what is ESA doing to have a diverse workplace and a balanced workplace, in particular in regards also to the astronaut selection?
Thank you very much, Ninja, for the question. I hope you can hear me. Okay, that's good. Yes, so first of all, diversity is not a burden for us. Diversity is an asset for us. And we know that at ESA, because since its creation in 1975, ESA had member states around Europe. And I can tell you from my own experience that you see really different cultures from people from Northern and Southern Europe, from Eastern and Western Europe. So therefore, diversity for ESA is an asset already, looking to the nationalities. But of course, diversity is also something which we are looking now into a more broader sense, looking to gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, beliefs, age, and disabilities and other characteristics. So for us as an equal opportunity employer, it's really important to have diversity as it helps us to make things better. And therefore, we would like at this type in the new search 2021, 2022, we would really particularly encourage women to apply because it's very interesting and supportive if we have mixed teams with different people from different background, with different gender, etc., as I said. But we have even more exciting news. This time, for the first time in human history, ESA will be selecting persons with physical disabilities who will take part in ESA Parastronaut project. So we did a first trial some 4 years ago when we invited 8 people with disabilities out of 5 European countries and made some parabolic flights with them. And this was a very nice experience, and we believe it's time also to assess the feasibility of sending astronauts with physical disabilities into space.
David, do you want to give us more details on this, what we call the ESA Parastronaut feasibility project?
Yes, with pleasure, Nina. Yeah, all of us see at ESA see diversity as not just an aspiration, but something we have to live in our everyday lives. And we all witness people with various disabilities, or let's say differently abled people, taking their place in society, in politics, on our TV screens. We've all marveled at the Para-Olympians. So these are ordinary people that have overcome extraordinary challenges to succeed in life. We need people in ESA who can succeed. We already have people working at ESA who have disabilities, and we need more of them to join us. But visible representation is always important. And so therefore, we've been asking ourselves, what are the barriers preventing us to fly a physically disabled astronaut to the ISS and to work there? So therefore, alongside the core astronaut selection project, we've assessed how to select a physically disabled individual to join the astronaut reserve in the first instance. And subsequently, we're going to investigate the technical and operational feasibility of implementing a meaningful and useful mission by such a person. Now, this possibility raises many, many questions, most of which we do not have answers for yet. Obviously, we don't have our own crew vehicles to fly to the space station today in Europe. So obviously, we need to work with all of the ISS partners on this. And obviously, safety is a vital consideration. Nevertheless, we think that if we don't ask the questions, we will not find the answers. And this is the very essence of exploration. So we know that in presenting this idea today, there's a very fine line between raising expectations and the reality that it will take us time to find answers to all these questions. We need to work with experts in the field, and we need to work with the providers of the space transportation, and there's a very, maybe also with technology companies, medical technology companies. And maybe by this, we'll open up new partnerships for our human research program with Jennifer's program, and maybe have far-reaching implications for our eventual lunar and Mars exploration. So we feel we have a responsibility to at least try and make this happen and lead by example. So we hope to push the envelope on the topic of disability at work and inspire people with special needs to apply to other roles in ESA and more widely in the space industry. So let me be precise. We are looking for an individual who is psychologically, cognitively, technically, and professionally qualified to be an astronaut, but has certain classes of physical limitation that would normally prevent them from being selected through the requirements we normally have. So right now we're at step 0. The door is closed to such people. We want to change that, and we want to go from 0 to 1.
Thank you, David. Before we now go into the questions and answer sessions, because I see a lot of our journalists are very keen, of course, to ask questions, I would still like to give the word to Samantha and to Tim, because they have been through this experience. They have once applied to become an astronaut, and they have been selected. So my question, let me start with Samantha then, is what has motivated you most to apply, and what is it you would like to pass on to those going through this experience right now?
So, well, I personally did not need much motivation. I had been waiting for an opportunity to become an astronaut all my life. It has been a childhood dream of mine. So, of course, as soon as that website opened, almost 13 years ago, I jumped on the opportunity to go in and apply. What I would like to give along, it's been mentioned already today that it's a long process. It's certainly quite stressful. And we have to be honest, we expect and we hope that thousands of people will apply, and we are only going to select a handful. So the chances of success are slim. But I think it's a great opportunity, regardless of whether at the end you will be selected or not. It's an amazing journey. I think it will be an opportunity to learn a lot about yourselves, your strengths, your weaknesses, how you perform in a process like this. It's difficult, it's challenging, but I always tell young people, when you have a choice in life between doing something difficult and something easy, usually go for the difficult one because that's the most fun. And I think the astronaut selection is really such an example. I mean, even before I got to the end and actually got selected, which, obviously was great. But even before that, I had so many interesting, challenging, and also fun experiences, and so many opportunities to really build long-lasting friendships, camaraderie, and really a few long-lasting friendships with people that I met through the astronaut selection process. And last but not least, I think ESA really bends over backwards. They did for us back then, and I'm sure we will do it even more now to make it a pleasant process, to be nurturing and encouraging, and even through this process to help you grow. Because of course we have an interest in you, maybe if you're not going to become an astronaut, applying for one of the many, many jobs that are going to open up in the agency in the next years.
Thank you, Samantha. I think that was very, very inspiring. Tim, anything to add from your side?
I think, Samantha put it very succinctly there. And I would only say from my point of view, my motivation coming from a test pilot background was to be part of this incredible team. And when you look at what we're doing in human spaceflight, it is quite remarkable. We are pushing the boundaries. We're asking more of our engineering, of our scientists, of our astronauts, and everybody. And so to be part of this international team that can actually make a real difference is a huge privilege, a real privilege. And it was that really that motivated me to want to be part of this team, to push myself, even further than I thought was possible. And as Samantha said, it is a long journey, but it's an incredibly exciting one. It's a life-changing one. And I am really excited for anybody who is applying to this new selection process.
Thank you, Tim. I think it's now time to go into questions from our audience, from the journalists that are with us here on this online platform. As mentioned, you can raise your hand on the left side digitally, and then we will give you the word in chronological order. So let's start with Jonathan Amos. Jonathan, I hope we can unmute you and make you visible so that you can ask the question yourself. Looking for Jonathan to appear. Yeah. There he is. Hi. Takes a while. Welcome.
Greetings from Cambridge. It's a bit grey today. I'm really excited about the diversity aspect of this, particularly the idea of para-astronauts. I guess this is a question for David. If you can get the international partners comfortable with this, if you can answer those questions, the clear intention, yes, is to fly a para-astronaut at some stage, perhaps this decade. Yes, I mean, this is a real commitment, right?
Yes, this is something I put my personal support behind, the Director General has put his support behind. We think it's something we just have to do. We know there are challenges, so I can't tell you when, but in a few years' time, and not too far after the new group of astronauts are flying, we need to make this happen. Yes, please.
And then just to follow up with Tim and Samantha, if I may, they've been in space. What do you think of this idea, and what do you think the challenges might be? I mean, because obviously you will have to contribute to this search for the truth on this topic.
Well, I think that, as David was saying, when we looked at this astronaut selection, the question is, when we're looking at criteria at which to select our astronauts, it's a case of why can't somebody do this job? And so when you look at people with disabilities, you think, well, why couldn't they do this? We need to look into this. We need to research this. And as an astronaut who's lived and worked in weightlessness, and I'm sure Samantha will agree, that there are many, many things that you can achieve without necessarily utilizing your lower limbs, for example, on board the space station in weightlessness. And it's the right time to be asking those probing questions, the right time to be thinking, actually, it's about ability, it's not about disability. And is it feasible, is it possible to actually, you know, have people with disabilities flying into space? I wouldn't have any concerns, you know, having gone through this feasibility study. We'll analyze it, we'll look at the safety implications, of course, we'll make sure it's all done in a very safe environment. But I wouldn't have any concerns at all with flying to space with a person with disabilities.
Samantha, do you have a thought?
Yes, I would put it this way. It was mentioned today already, you know, we did not evolve to go to space. So when it comes to space travel, we are all disabled. You know, we all have a disability because we were just not meant to be up there. So what brings us from being, you know, disabled to go to space to being able to go to space is technology. So in the end, it's just a matter of, do we want to invest in the technology, in the necessary adaptations of space hardware that makes it possible for people who are otherwise fully qualified to be astronauts, you know, who are highly qualified professionals, who would normally, you know, be selected no problem, but have some kind of physical disability that simply prevents them from using that technology that enables today people like me and Tim to go to space. And so we need to adapt that technology. And again, it's a feasibility study. We're going to have to look into what exactly is needed, you know, how much it costs, is it really feasible? But that's the goal, you know, to adapt space technology so that not only people like me and Tim can go to space, but also people with some kinds of physical disability.
Many thanks, and thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Jonathan. The next question is from Andrew Clester, if I pronounce this correctly. Andrew, we're trying to give you the word, both visually as well as in terms of your microphone being turned on. Always takes a moment. Andrew, if you're experiencing any difficulties, you can also type your questions on the right side in the comment field.
Maybe I fill in the time a bit, Nina, by saying a bit more about the criteria for the Parastronaut project.
Yes.
So as we said, we're not experts in this field, so we've reached out to some of the experts, and including the International Paralympics Committee. So we've used their knowledge to select certain categories of physical disability that we're going to consider might be feasible for the Parastronaut project. And that will be well defined in our online material and in the press kit, so people can see the details of that.
Thank you, David. I don't see Andrew yet. Then I would give the word to Lucy Rogers, who has also indicated that she has a question to ask. Lucy, the floor is yours, if you can turn on your audio. There she is.
Lucy Rogers from the Engineering Edge podcast. You want more diversity. Are you taking into consideration career breaks and untraditional careers? And as a second part, are you looking for a different set of skills and traits for your astronauts this time round than you have in previous recruitment drives?
Thank you, Lucy. Maybe this is a question for the other Lucy to answer.
You can hear me now, I'm assuming. Yes, good. I'm not aware of any difference in terms of competence. And what we have done is we are currently going through certification through a recognized authority for diversity criteria. And we have previous astronauts, there was a lot of emphasis on pilots and military, and this is not the case this time around. So we're hoping through some of these changes that we're making that we will make it more accessible to women.
And will you be considering non-traditional careers?
I think so. I think you've heard too the requirements that we have for astronauts. It's very stringent. But as I said as well, I don't know if you heard at the beginning, we have a lot of other jobs at ESA. And there will only be a small number of people who finally make it through to the astronaut selection. But we have a lot of other jobs. And there we can be much more flexible. And we have a very wide range of family-friendly policies and working arrangements. So if it's not possible to be an astronaut because you don't make the grade, there are lots of other opportunities at ESA.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you, Lucy. Next in line is Tanya, and then I don't know if I pronounced it correctly, Paya. Tanya, the floor is yours, if you can take the microphone. Otherwise, we could also give the word to Kim McAllister while we are waiting for Tanya to connect.
Yeah,
there she is. There's Tanya.
I hope I can show the camera. Thank you so much for arranging this, and this is so inspiring to see diversity on space. But I represent Hyroxia magazine in Finland, and Tim, you run a marathon in space. How did it feel?
The sound wasn't great there, Tanya, but I think you're asking how did I feel about running the marathon. Well, the point in space is that Samantha kind of said we're all disabled, and part of that process is trying to remain fit and healthy for returning back to Earth. So we have to exercise for about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours every day to keep our cardiovascular system in good shape and to keep our bones and muscles to prevent that from atrophying. And Jennifer was pointing out some of those the effects on the human body when we go into microgravity. So I figured that if I was having to exercise that much, then running a marathon wasn't a huge leap further on. And actually, it was great to do. I felt that the effects actually were not too bad and very similar to running a marathon back here on Earth.
Are you planning to run a marathon on Earth?
I prefer half marathons. A marathon is a long distance to train for, so half marathons is my kind of competitive time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Tim. So now we're trying to get back to Kim McAllister. You were indicating that you have a question. We will try now to turn on your audio and your camera.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for asking my question. I'm really interested in the timing of this announcement, given that we've just had a horrendous year under COVID and we're not even out of it yet. And you've all mentioned inspiration as a key part of what you do. What are you hoping to achieve in terms of the next generation by announcing this now?
Jan, do you want to take that question?
I can, if I understood the question correctly. So, of course, COVID is impacting us still today, but the process will not be impacted by that. So it will be at the beginning anyhow, as you heard, it will be through internet, and therefore we believe that we will be in a let's say a new normal. It will not be the same as before very soon. So my hope is that this process at the end will not be affected by the COVID, because hopefully we have COVID as a history in, let's say, something like 1 year from now. So this is my hope, if I understood your question correctly. So I believe the selection will not be affected by that. And also space activities as such were not really strongly affected, as you know. We have still astronauts on the International Space Station. We are doing all our missions to go to Moon and Mars. Earth observation, all the space activities are running quite well. So I don't see that there is a bigger issue.
And maybe I could add to what Jan has said it's very important that the work that happens aboard the space station continues. So these new group of astronauts, once they've completed their training and prepared for specific missions, they'll be flying in 2024, 2025 or later. But the research is ongoing, and you mentioned COVID. We even have some COVID-related drug research going on board on our European laboratory, Columbus, as we speak. So it's really important that this work continues and we plan for the future, as well as dealing with the challenges of today.
And do you think in terms of attracting attention, it's giving people something to aim for and something to hope for when we do return to something like normal?
Yeah, I think it's, of course, space is exciting. It raises people's horizons, eyes to the horizon, and reminds us that the challenges like COVID are dealt with on a global scale, and exploration is a global scale endeavor. It's all the countries working together to solve problems. So yes, it's a reminder of the power of inspiration of science, technology, maths. All of these things are important for our future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Next in line is Emmett Ryan, who wanted to ask a question as well. Emmett, we're turning your audio now on and your camera if you want to. You don't have to.
Oh, no, I'm happy to. Emmett Ryan in Dublin here. With my COVID beard. First of all, thanks everybody for the talk. Lucy, when you described irregular hours, frequent travel and long absence to your family, I thought you were recruiting technology and science journalists, to be honest, not astronauts. But my question's actually for Samantha and Tim. Obviously, there's a good chance some of the astronauts selected here will be the first ever from their nations. And you both know, because there's only been a handful of Italian and a couple of British astronauts, how big a deal it is for a nation to have someone go to space. So if you could just describe, I suppose, whichever one of you wants to go first, what it means in terms of the symbol you are for people back in your own home countries to be that first person or one of the first people from your country to go to space.
I would like to answer that question, or to give a comment first. You see, we do not have national astronauts in Europe. We have European astronauts with different passports, with different travel licenses, etc. And I always insist in this. I know that Tim is a hero in UK, that Samantha is a hero in Italy. I know that. But there is a but, and this is Tim can also be a hero in France, and Samantha can be a hero in Germany, because she speaks German fluently. No, because we sometimes try also to move the astronauts from one country to the other to show that. So I saw, for instance, Tim in the French TV at prime time, 8 o'clock in the evening, having an interview with the moderator in the French TV for 10 minutes. And I thought, wow, now it's really Europe. It works. And I think that therefore, I'm as a DG of ESA, I insist that we have European astronauts. I accept that they are loved by their country, but I hope they are loved by all countries of ESA.
Thanks. So, Tim, given you are loved by UK people, what's it like? So, what's something you think of as a symbol for your own people? For Samantha, because I know we are all European, but at the same time, like if Ireland got an astronaut, it would be a huge deal here for Jan. So.
Yeah, as Jan has said there, of course, there's a lot of national pride in seeing somebody go into space, but we are all European, and one of the great things when you're working on board the space station is lots of the outreach projects as well. They're pan-European projects, and I think that was really exciting. That's something I took a lot of pleasure from. Was seeing these competitions that we were doing, and really what we're trying to do here is we've spoken about the qualities that are required by certain astronauts in terms of STEM. We're trying to take that back all the way to our young students to try and get them inspired, get them involved in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. The pace of technology is changing so fast at the moment. It doesn't matter what career you go into, it's going to be very important for the future. And so I think that's something that we can do as any European astronaut, is we can help to encourage our younger Europeans to get involved in STEM.
And Samantha, is there anything you'd like to say about that aspect?
I mean, I think in the end, we are not in control of the way we are perceived, right? And I think we have to welcome any positive effect that we have. So while I personally really strive to speak to as wide as possible European audience, and I really personally, with the support of the agency, make an effort to really reach out in multiple languages and in multiple countries. At the same time, I recognize that I am I personally have a special meaning for people in Italy, and that is just a fact, as the Director General was saying. And and as long as it's a positive pride and it doesn't become confrontational towards other countries, I think that's also a positive thing. So
thank you all. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmett, and thank you, Samantha. Next in line is Jade. Jade, we're going to turn on your audio and maybe camera now, so you can ask your question yourself.
Hi. My question is, with the diversification of available launch vehicles, which will the astronauts be training to launch on? Will it be both the commercial vehicles and the typical contractor or government vehicles, or will they focus on one specific area?
Do you want to take that question, Frank, maybe?
Yes, certainly, Nina, I can take that question. So yes, today we have a diversity of launch vehicles. We have SpaceX flying to space, and the next mission of Thomas Pesquet will be on a SpaceX vehicle launching to the ISS in the second half of April. We still have the Soyuz vehicles that are flying as well, and we hope that very soon the Boeing vehicle will come online as well and will also be qualified. So our astronauts can actually fly on any of those vehicles. This is decided on a mission-by-mission basis. It's decided on the traffic flow to the International Space Station, and it's decided by the international community. For us, it's not so important on which vehicle our astronauts fly. Again, the work that we do is on board of the International Space Station, the 6 months that they are there, that they do the research, that they do the technology advancement. Then which bus you take to go there is actually of less importance. And so we are open to any solution in the future. Of course, for the experience of the Corps, because we have a lot of experience in our European Astronaut Corps, it's good to have a diversity also there as well. That, as Samantha said, when they come back from their flights, they also participate in the development of new projects inside ESA, and of course, having a more diverse experience base in our European Astronaut Corps is of course beneficial. So that's why we strive with our international partners to fly both on the US side and on the Russian side and with all vehicles. But at the end, it doesn't really matter.
You've talked a lot about the International Space Station, but as obviously it takes a few years for the astronauts to be trained and the International Space Station is coming to the end of its lifespan, I believe, will they be, what replacement will there be for the ESA astronauts in low Earth orbit, or will you focus on the Lunar Gateway?
No, it's a very good question, and we are actually actively working in ESA. We have actually set up a strategy team to look into the future, what comes beyond the International Space Station. We have to think, first of all, that the International Space Station most likely will be there till 2030. The formal decisions have not been taken yet, but everything is on the way, the process is on the way to take these decisions this year or latest next year. So we still have about 10 years ahead of us of full exploitation of the International Space Station. And it's actually going to be the richest time because we have now 7 crew members on board of the ISS. So we will have much more time to really benefit of all the investments that we have made in the past. So that is the current focus. We know that after that, we will need probably to do something else. And this is where we are starting to build up, together with the international partnership, something that we call the LEO economy, low Earth orbit economy. Can we establish an economy in low Earth orbit where we will have commercial providers, not only of transportation like we have now SpaceX or Boeing, but also of infrastructure, of modules, of research facilities? And can the governments, be it NASA, be it ESA, be it Canada, Japan, Russia, be customers to go there to do their science, to do their experiments, to do their technology development, to have operational expertise for their astronauts. This is something that we are actively working on, and that I think will be the long-term future of low Earth orbit. There will not be a next International Space Station. There might be several space stations operated by different entities, and then we have to see which ones can we use best for the purpose that we need. We might also fly with the Chinese, for example. It's another example. Samantha is here. She was already studying Chinese in the past, and she had done some training already with our Chinese colleagues. So is that a future avenue as well? So again, exploration is about doing new things, as Dave mentioned very well, is doing things that have never been done before, testing the unknown. And so building up this LEO economy, flying together with our Chinese colleagues, for example, is something that is also on the timeline and that this new selection of astronauts might participate in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Jade. Next on our list is Helen Donahue. We will turn on your audio right now so you can ask your question. Waiting for Helen.
Can you hear me now? Hi,
Yes,
how are you
we hear
doing?
you.
Very good. This is a question to Samantha and Tim, please. Just what's the selection process actually like? Can you give us an indication how tough is it, and any tips for those who are hoping to succeed? And then secondly, just how realistic is it for smaller candidates, for smaller countries like Ireland, to actually expect to reach the final few?
With the selection process itself, I'm not sure what Samantha will make of it. It is a tough process. I found it tough going through, but I just took it one step at a time. I think it's important to pay attention to detail. I think Samantha made a mention earlier that, you know, a large number of people won't make it actually through the application phase. In 2008, it was about 11% of people made it through the application phase to be invited to round one. So attention to detail is very important. It's also important to be yourself. The European Space Agency will get to know you extremely well over this year. So don't try to second guess what is required. You know, if you've got the right personality, the right character, and the right kind of hard cognitive skills, then ESA will evaluate that throughout the whole process. There's a lot you can do to prepare in terms of research, in terms of improving your knowledge. Not everybody has a detailed knowledge about human spaceflight, so now is the time to start researching those projects and finding out more about it. And approach each stage with confidence. You know, we need to find people who are highly motivated, but also have belief in themselves. So I think the application process, it's long and it's drawn out, and it's just a case of taking it one step at a time. I don't know if Samantha has any more to add to that.
No, I think there was a very comprehensive set of tips. I mean, my only one tip that I'm going to say is apply. I mean, go for it. I think lots of people kind of second guess or are not maybe confident enough in their abilities, and I would say, well, they will never select me, and maybe they don't want to face that possibility of failing at this. I would say it doesn't matter because, as we said, we are expecting thousands of applications for very few selectees. So most people are going to fail. So it's a very, very safe place to fail. It's not a problem. But you're going to 100% fail if you do not apply. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that when you're going through that process of thinking, am I good enough? Am I not good enough? Stop right there. I mean, as long as you have the minimum qualifications, the minimum formal qualifications, and you have an interest, of course, in becoming an astronaut, please go for it. Let us at the agency make that, make that judgment whether you are, our next astronaut or not. Do not do it yourself because you're not in the position to do that. It's not so much about formal qualifications, except at the very beginning, at that very early stage. And, you might as well try, why not? But beyond that, this is a process that really evaluates the person as a whole. There was a question earlier about career breaks, and I think that was intended maybe especially for women who might have had children, have a career break in that sense, and I'm a mother myself, so I know what that is. And that helps build your personality, your whole sets of skills, your whole life experience. And believe it or not, this is a process, the astronaut selection, that takes all of that into account, because we have so many also psychological evaluations to really understand you as a whole person, not just your CV. So go for it. Give it a try.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. And just secondly, on the issue of smaller countries like Ireland, how realistic is it, do you think, that a candidate from a smaller country can succeed?
Perhaps I should answer. More question for
the call is open for all member states, as Dave was saying, and the associate member states. So it's open for all. And of course, we have to then to look also at the very end of the process, not through the selection, but at the end, then we want to have also these member states contributing to the exploration program. That's trivial, but the selection is open. And first, competence is counting. This is the main importance, the individual competence, as we heard also from Tim and Samantha. And this question of nationality is really not a selection criteria. But David, you should add something to that.
No, thank you. Yeah, no, I was just going to make the point of by example, which is we have Frank sitting here. He was the first European commander of the space station. He happens to have a passport from Belgium. We have Andy Mogensen, who has a passport from Denmark. We have astronauts in the past from Sweden and Switzerland and so on. So yes, it's definitely possible.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. I see time's up already. It flies. For those of you that are speaking Dutch or German or Italian or Spanish, there are more press briefings coming up after this one. So feel very, very welcome to join those as well. Also, I would like to remind everyone of the new website we have launched today, esa.int, Your Way to Space. There are many of the questions I see also in the comments field that are answered there. So please have a look. There's also a dedicated media kit available. You can find that also on the newsroom page on the ESA website. And if you have any more questions, any more things you would like to raise, please contact us at media@esa.int and we will get back to all of you. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to all the journalists and thank you most of all to all the speakers. Thank you so much.
Go for it.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Good luck.
Bye.